"I consider this disloyal, Victoria," said her voice like ice, as she stared down at me from behind that massive mahogany desk of hers. It was 9 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and I sat clutching my purse in my lap to keep my hands from trembling. My boss had called me into her office without warning, and in a matter of minutes, my world began to unravel. She tapped her manicured nail against a printed email. "Don't bother denying it. I have confirmation you interviewed with North Bay Solutions last Thursday. You told us you had a dental appointment." Her words sliced into me, and all I could do was sit in silence, my stomach in knots. "My name is Addison Walker. I'm 31 years old, and for 6 years I poured everything I had into Harbor Point Communications here in Spokane, Washington. 6 years of loyalty. 6 years of late nights. 6 years of carrying client portfolios worth millions. I believed I was building a career, maybe even a legacy. But in that moment, as Victoria's lips curved into the faintest smirk, I realized all of it meant nothing. "Security would meet me at my desk," she said. My email access had already been revoked. I could pack my belongings into a cardboard box and walk out under the spring sunshine like nothing had happened. Her decision might have broken someone else. But for me, humiliation quickly turned into clarity. For 3 years I had requested raises that reflected my contributions, showing her carefully prepared reports of revenue growth and client expansion. For 3 years, she had smiled, praised me in public, then dismissed me in private with excuses about tight budgets, while flaunting record profits. Each rejection had been a wound. Now being fired for seeking opportunity elsewhere was simply salt poured into it. I straightened my blazer and extended my hand across her desk. "I wish you and Harbor Point continued success," I told her, my voice calm despite the storm inside. For a brief moment she looked unsettled, as though she had expected tears or pleading. Instead, I gave her dignity and kept my own. Minutes later, under the watch of an awkward security guard, I packed my desk. Family photos, 6 years of desk plants, little mementos of my career that suddenly looked absurdly small inside a cardboard box. My colleagues glanced at me with sympathy, their eyes wide with shock. But I smiled at them, refusing to let Victoria see me broken. As I walked out of the building, the April sunshine warmed my face, and in that warmth I felt something unexpected: freedom. My phone buzzed the moment I placed the box in my trunk. It was David Klein, CEO of North Bay Solutions. "Can we move our final discussion to today at 2 p.m.? I smiled for the first time that day. Victoria thought she was punishing me. She couldn't have been more wrong. Driving home, I reflected on how my entire career seemed to fit into that cardboard box. I thought about the early days after grad school, eager and ambitious, fetching coffee and organizing meeting notes just to prove I belonged. I thought about the campaigns that won awards, the nights I stayed late to salvage accounts others had abandoned. I thought about North Bay, Harbor Point's largest client, who had specifically asked for me when they nearly walked out years ago. Victoria had reaped the benefits of my labor, of my dedication, but she never valued me. Not really. And now in her arrogance, she had thrown me away, handing me directly into the arms of the very company that had always seen my worth. By the time I reached my apartment, I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like someone standing at the edge of something new, something stronger. My best friend Olivia called as I set the box on the kitchen counter. She was furious on my behalf, insisting everyone at the office knew I was the only reason North Bay had stayed with Harbor Point as long as they had. Her outrage steadied me, because she was right. Victoria hadn't just fired me, she had severed Harbor Point's lifeline, and she had no idea what was coming next. At 1:45 that afternoon, I walked into the glass tower that housed North Bay Solutions. My reflection in the lobby windows looked steadier than I felt. But I straightened my blazer and reminded myself that I had nothing to lose. David Klein, the CEO himself, greeted me in the conference room. He was sharp but approachable, the kind of leader who listened more than he spoke. "Addison," he said warmly, "thank you for coming on short notice. After everything you've done for us at Harbor Point, we wanted to make sure you knew how much we value your work." Hearing those words nearly undid me. For years I had craved even the smallest recognition from Victoria, only to be met with condescension. Now here was a CEO acknowledging my worth without hesitation. The meeting unfolded like a dream. David laid out their vision for growth and where they saw me fitting in, not as a mid-level account manager, but as director of strategic partnerships. The salary he quoted was nearly double what I'd been making with bonuses tied to performance. "We've watched how you've handled crises," he said. "When Harbor Point nearly lost us 3 years ago, you kept us on board. You were the reason we stayed." My throat tightened. All those late nights, all those weekends spent fixing other people's mistakes, it hadn't been invisible after all. By the time I left the building, an offer letter in hand, I felt taller, lighter, freer. That evening, Olivia came over with takeout and a bottle of wine. When I showed her the offer, she squealed so loudly my neighbor banged on the wall. "Addison, this is everything you deserve and more. Victoria must be kicking herself already." I laughed, but there was a shadow in me still. "She doesn't even know. She thinks she humiliated me. She thinks she won." Olivia leaned across the table, her eyes gleaming. "Then let her find out the hard way. The best revenge isn't anger, it's success she can't control." The truth of her words settled into me. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, the betrayal of being discarded after years of loyalty still stung. But I had something better than bitterness. I had leverage. The next morning I signed North Bay's offer and sent it back. Within hours the news reached Harbor Point. My phone buzzed with messages from former colleagues. "Victoria's in shock. She thought you'd disappear quietly. Now she's furious." I imagined her pacing that corner office, realizing too late that in firing me, she hadn't eliminated a threat. She'd handed her biggest client to me on a silver platter. The first week at North Bay was exhilarating. I walked into my new office overlooking the city, and for the first time in years I felt like I belonged somewhere that matched my ambition. My team greeted me with respect, eager to hear my ideas. I found myself laughing during meetings, something I hadn't done in months at Harbor Point. But what struck me most was the contrast in leadership. David invited feedback, encouraged collaboration, and treated every employee like they mattered. It was the opposite of Victoria's iron fist and veiled threats. Still, part of me braced for her retaliation. I knew her too well. She wasn't the type to accept defeat gracefully. Sure enough, a week later I received a terse email from her. "You've put yourself in a very precarious position. I hope you know what you're doing." I stared at the words, a rush of old fear tightening my chest. But then I remembered I wasn't her employee anymore. I wasn't under her control. I closed the email without replying. My silence was louder than any words I could send. That night, as I walked home through the cool spring air, I thought about how quickly life had turned. One morning, I had been packing my desk into a cardboard box, ashamed and uncertain. Now I was building something new, stronger than before. Victoria thought she had ended my story. She had no idea she had only written the first chapter of my comeback. It didn't take long for the cracks to show at Harbor Point. By my second week at North Bay, whispers were already reaching me through old colleagues. Clients were restless. Campaign deadlines slipped. The calm confidence I used to bring into chaotic rooms had vanished, and with it Harbor Point's stability. One afternoon, Olivia texted me. "You won't believe this. Victoria just called an emergency meeting. North Bay is threatening to pull the plug completely." I set my phone down and took a steadying breath. I had warned them countless times while I was still there that neglecting relationships would cost them dearly. Now the truth was hitting harder than they could bear. At North Bay, David asked me to sit in on a call with their executive board. "We want to make it official," he said. "Harbor Point no longer meets our needs. Addison, you're the reason we're still here, and we'd like you to lead us into the future." The finality in his voice brought a strange mixture of triumph and sadness. I remembered the years I had spent holding Harbor Point together, believing my loyalty mattered. Now, in one stroke, the very foundation I had built was transferring to me, not as a sacrifice, but as recognition. That evening I went for a walk downtown. The city was alive with evening lights, people bustling with purpose. I thought of all the times I had driven home in tears, dreading another morning under Victoria's glare. I thought of the raises denied, the dismissive comments, the way she made me feel like ambition was arrogance. And I realized I had carried shame that was never mine to bear. The following week, Harbor Point made headlines in the local business journal. Major client withdraws, future of Harbor Point uncertain. I sat at my desk staring at the article, my heart pounding. Olivia called within minutes. You did it, she whispered, awe in her voice. You didn't just survive, you took everything she thought she could deny you. But I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. I didn't destroy Harbor Point. Victoria did. All I did was stop letting her destroy me. The difference mattered. Because despite the satisfaction of watching her empire crumble, I didn't want revenge to define me. What I wanted, what I had always wanted, was respect, value, and the chance to grow. Still, karma has a way of writing its own chapters. A month later, Victoria showed up in the lobby at North Bay demanding to see me. I hadn't expected her to come face to face so soon, but when the receptionist buzzed me, I said yes. She stood there, every line of her posture brittle. You think you've won? She hissed, her eyes flashing. I met her gaze calmly. This was never about winning, it was about surviving. Her lip curled. North Bay was ours, you stole them. No, I said softly, they chose me, because I gave them everything you never valued. For a moment the fight drained out of her. She looked smaller, diminished, like a queen stripped of her crown. Then she turned on her heel and stormed out, her heels clicking sharp against the tile. I watched her go with a mix of pity and relief. She had built her career on fear, and now fear was all she had left. That night I sat on my balcony with a notebook in hand. I wrote down everything I had learned, that loyalty without recognition is exploitation, that silence in the face of mistreatment only feeds it, and that sometimes the greatest act of revenge is simply walking away into something better. The cardboard box I had carried out of Harbor Point felt like a lifetime ago. Now I was unpacking myself, not into an office, not into a role, but into the woman I was always meant to become. The weeks after Victoria's visit to North Bay were quiet, almost eerily so. I half expected her to launch some legal maneuver, to claim I had violated non-compete clauses or stolen clients, but she didn't. Perhaps she knew the truth, that no paper contract could bind loyalty, and loyalty was something she had long since squandered. Instead, Harbor Point continued to spiral. More clients pulled out, staff began resigning. Rumors reached me through Olivia that Victoria rarely left her office, that she barked orders to a dwindling team, while HR scrambled to fill gaps no one wanted anymore. Her kingdom was collapsing, not because of me, but because she had built it on sand. Meanwhile, my own life blossomed in ways I hadn't dared to imagine. At North Bay, my work wasn't just recognized, it was celebrated. My team listened, collaborated, and delivered results that made even seasoned executives take notice. For the first time, I wasn't fighting to prove my worth. I was leading from a place where my worth was assumed, yet beneath the triumph was a quieter, more tender current healing. I didn't realize how much weight I'd carried at Harbor Point until it was gone, the constant fear of being dismissed, the ache of feeling invisible, the exhaustion of begging for scraps of recognition. Without that burden, I felt lighter, freer, like I could finally breathe. One evening, Olivia and I met for coffee. She slid a copy of the latest business journal across the table. The headline read, "Harbor Point Communications announces closure after major losses." I stared at the words, my chest tightening. This was it, the end of the place I had once thought would be my forever career. A chapter closed, not with a bang, but with a slow, inevitable unraveling. "How do you feel?" Olivia asked gently. I thought about it before answering. Not happy, not sad, just finished, because that's what it was. Finished. My story wasn't tied to Harbor Point anymore, it was tied to the life I was building now, but fate had one more turn in store. Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Victoria. Her handwriting was sharp, almost angry, but her words were unexpectedly fragile. She admitted she had underestimated me. She admitted her pride had blinded her. And in a moment of rare vulnerability, she wrote, "You were the one who kept us alive. Without you, I see that now." I read the letter twice, then folded it back into its envelope. For years I had begged her to see me. Now she did, but only when it was too late. And strangely, I didn't feel the vindication I thought I would. What I felt was peace. Because I no longer needed her recognition, I had given it to myself. That night I stood on my balcony with the city lights flickering below and whispered into the cool evening air, "I survived you, Victoria. and I found myself in the process. To anyone listening to my story now, I want you to take this lesson. Never let someone convince you that your loyalty is weakness, or that your silence is gratitude. If you are giving everything and receiving nothing but excuses, remember this. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the greatest act of revenge is not destruction, but rebuilding yourself into something stronger than they ever imagined. So if my story touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need courage today, and subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from someone who didn't value you, and what did you discover on the other side? I'd love to hear your truth.